Hello, let's look at this PDF called P2P, three-way match. P2P is purchase to payables or procure to payables. Fancy word for purchase, procure to payables. Three-way match. This is very important that you understand this. And I'm going to use a PDF here that was developed by SAP. It very clearly lays out what goes on in the purchase to payables. You know, the last lecture ended talking about payroll. And payroll is so important. The controls that you have there, the recording and so forth. But also, right along with that is your whole payable cycle, accounts payable. And purchasing is the lead off for that, to make sure we as accountants understand what purchasing is doing, and backing up even further what your requisitioners are doing, the approval process, purchasing, and then how we make sure in payables that we're paying something that should be paid, correct? And how do we record the liability for that? And when do we record the liability? So let me share that PDF here because it answers some key questions here. What you see there is procure to pay. All right, procure, that's a fancy word for purchase. Purchase to payables, that's what we used to call it. Purchase to payables, procure to pay. All right, this show a rather lengthy process here, starting up here in the upper right, determination of requirements. Someone decides that we need to purchase something for, maybe it's inventory, maybe it's some type of consumable that we're going to expense. Somebody determines the source, that's probably purchasing. At the same time, the vendor selection, PO processing, order monitoring, good receipt, invoice verification, and payment. Three-way match. What is a three-way match? A three-way match, what we're going to look at here is the actual purchase order, receipt, and invoice. I'm supposed to say invoice. So there you got PO, good receipt, and invoice. Those three together have to agree in order to authorize payment, right? Authorize the issuance of a check to disperse company funds. The fiduciary responsibility that we have as accountants is to make sure this three-way match, very common terminology. So let's look at this next slide, maybe. Let me delete all of my boxes off of here, or my circles, which I don't know if you can see, but I can. All right, SAP does a very good job here of showing the process. So what is a purchase rec? That's when someone decides they need to purchase something. Maybe it's somebody in your facility working in production. Maybe it's your supply chain logistics. They do a lot of that. Or in engineering. You've got all these, and maintenance. You've got all these different groups that are bubbling up these requisitions, and someone needs to approve those requisitions, and that gets approved. And once it's approved in the department against their particular general ledger code and call center, then the requisition goes to purchasing. And then a purchase order is created, right? Purchase order. That is a commitment. Commitment, I don't know if I spelled that right or not. That is a commitment. The company has committed, but that is not a liability. Just because you have a purchase order approved, and even though that number, that purchase order number, which is got to be on every document thereafter, including your bill of lading and also your invoice, that is not a liability. That is a commitment. You've committed the company, right? All right, so the purchase order is out there. Where does the obligation occur? The obligation occurs right here. Good receipt. So there's the first step, second step, and then the third step, invoice verification. Three-way match. Those three have to match. That's why it's called a three-way match. Every accounts payable, purchasing system, company you work for, I'll talk about the three-way match. But the obligation occurs right there. And you can tell by looking at this diagram that must be an obligation because what? There's a journal entry, right? Here's a journal entry. I'm debiting inventory or asset. All right, one of the two, inventory or asset. It could be something else though. What? Could be what? An expense. Doesn't have to be inventory and asset. You know, going back to that first lecture I had about the framework, groundwork that's laid to fundamentals. Normal debit balances are assets and expenses. Why is that? It's one of the two. If it's not an asset, it should be an expense, right? So many times things get put into an asset that should have been expense and vice versa. So always keep that in mind. That's why it's a debit, DR, to inventory, asset, or expense. There's the entry. So what's this second entry here, this credit, GRIR clearing account? That's a goods received, invoice receipt, clearing account. All that's saying is that's where we're going to put that. It's a liability, first of all. That's just an account that we're going to put it in, sort of like income summary or purchases that you use in managerial accounting or cost accounting. It's just a clearing account to hold that, to get that on your books as a liability when you take receipt of the goods or if the service is being rendered. So when those, if you're buying something here, let's just say, I don't know, say you're buying a forklift battery and that thing comes in, it's an asset, it's going to be depreciated. When that's received on your docks, even though you don't have an invoice for it yet, that goes on your books as an asset and more importantly, a liability. That is an obligation because you have taken possession of this. Title has passed. You have it. You haven't paid for it yet, but you have it. That's the obligation. That's what this whole chapter 13 is about. The obligation, not the commitment, the obligation. So many people think the commitment is where the liability occurs. It does not. And this diagram SAP has shows you that. All right, so there's the obligation. Good receipt, obligation. All right, then we wait, and it could be the same day, maybe next week. Usually, it's usually sooner rather than later because people want to get paid. That invoice comes in either as a paper invoice or it comes in as an electronic notice. That invoice can be either matched manually with the receipt and the purchase order because the invoice has to have the purchase order number on it, PO number. It's like this has to have the PO number on it, right? Purchase order number up there. All these have to match together. All three, the quantity and the price, have to match. And once they match, then we're going to clear out our GRIR clearing account, right? That goes to zero. GRIR, whatever that amount is, let's say it's 100, that's going to come out of there, right? Now it's zero after these first two steps. And if it comes out of there, where does it go? It goes to the accounts payable, to whatever vendor that is, to maintain a record of what you paid to which vendors. All right, and then the accounts payable payment run, then we're going to what? Take it out of accounts payable and take it out of our cash. That is a great example of the three-way match, the purchase to payables, the procurement to payables process that about every company is going to use. This may be 3 pieces of paper. It may be 3 different items that are all databases on your computer. I mean, we're pretty much paperless anymore. Last company I worked for, it was all paper. The one before that, it was only the invoice was paper. The purchase and the receipt were both automated. In fact, going all the way back into 30 years ago, the purchase order and the receipt were automated online, and the invoice was paper. So depending on the size of your company, it may be all paper, it may be all online. But I'd say your larger companies now, it's all online. But the three-way match still occurs. It's just something that is done automatically. So you can see the whole accrual process, the month-end closing process is expedited by the fact that when these goods are received and somebody's actually out there on your docks or wherever it might be keying in the receipt as the goods are delivered, that person doesn't know it, but when they key that in against the purchase order, they're creating the accrual for you. You don't have to do a month-end accrual for that. It's accrued. The expense is there, or the asset, the inventory, and the liability occurs. So let's go ahead and go through the rest of these slides. My screen is a mess from all of these writings I have on here. I don't think you can see that, but in the interest of time, I'm not going to clear off all of them. They show just a little bit more here about what the process is. There's a great slide there. Let me talk to this one, then we'll wrap it up here. SAP, three-step verification. I love that. Look at the purchase order over here. MM, that's probably just the two-digit code, transaction code that SAP uses. But they've got the purchase order, and look what's going on with that purchase order. It's being matched. See the lines being drawn there? It's being matched to the goods receipt and also the invoice receipt. Three-way match. Purchase order, goods receipt, invoice receipt. Three-way. Three-step verification. Goods receipt, invoice verification. Look at the T accounts that they've got here. Material stock or consumption, meaning that's either asset, consumption is expense, debit, right? Two, or transaction one goes to invoice or GRIR. There's what was on that previous page, previous screen. Debit, credit, and then once the actual invoice comes in, right, that's two. So that's step two down here. This is step one here. All right. Good stuff. All right. Thank you. We'll see you soon, and we'll look at the homework that I've assigned in Pearson. Have a great day.